You're listening to Hackers to Founders with Chris Magistrato.
Perfect. 10 out of 10. We're going to use that in the openings. A podcast about cybersecurity professionals who have reached the pinnacle of their cybersecurity expertise and have ventured into new frontiers, whether it's launching innovative startups or making impactful investments in our industry. My name is Chris Magistrato, and I'm a vulnerability researcher best known for traveling and meeting hackers from all around the world.
The most surprising one is when I was at DEF CON, and I had thought, right, like I'm saying now, oh, it'd be nice to get Chinese, nation-state hackers on the show. Well, at the time, I thought it'd be nice to get the NSA on the show, but that's never going to happen. They're never going to admit to their hacks. And I was at DEF CON one year, and I got a tap on the shoulder.
And I'm using what little extrovert skills I have to introduce to you hackers that are changing the world. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps. And if you're on Spotify, please give us 5 stars. Thanks. And welcome back to Hackers to Founders. My name is Chris Magistrato, and today we have the privilege of having Jack Rhysider, host of the hit podcast series Darknet Diaries, with us.
Hey.
Hey. A hacker who didn't just create a podcast, but whom created an entire community that expands and grows by every episode he creates. He is a master storyteller who improves his abilities by learning and growing, listening, and reading the books to improve his craft, and even taking online courses in story creation and storyboarding. Join us as we dive deep into the challenges that he has faced when building his empire and what he plans to do next. Jack, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Wow, that was quite an intro.
Man, that's the first time I didn't use ChatGPT for the intro too. So I was like, all right, let's do this. And I hope it went okay.
Yeah, I see you using the blue snowball mic there. That was the mic that I used at the very beginning as well. I think the first 5 episodes, and then I borrowed a mic from a friend, which was a little bit better. A Shure 78. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the classic one you see on every stage, and I switched to that one and eventually worked my way up to an even better one. But that's where it started. And I remember I put myself underneath a blanket to get the audio quality as best as I could. So it was like me and the laptop and a blanket over my head and that mic right there.
Yeah, I heard you say that in one of your interviews. I think I saw like 3 interviews in prep for this, and I would do that too. But then like the whole video is gonna be terrible, and I'm in this massive room, so like it's just, I don't know, like it looks just silly, I think. But it's even as I have this, and I know this is like the beginner thing. It's kind of fun because it's like I know once we get to episode 50 or 60 or something, like there'll be incremental changes as we're like going on our podcast. So it's kind of like I can look back and be like, wow, I remember I was holding that thing and there's so much spotty noises everywhere. And it'll just be like part of the process, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm big on, like, when I was younger, I thought, oh, I could make some songs, right? And when I was a teenager, I was like, I could do all this stuff musicians are doing. So I gathered up all the instruments, accordion, drums, a guitar, a piano. Like, I just got everything in my room. And then I was like, wait, you can't actually just make a song. You have to actually practice these instruments for years before making some music. And so it occurred to me early on that, like, you shouldn't, I don't like becoming, like, limitless in my gear. I like to really get a minimal set of gear and then push that to its limit, because sometimes when you have just all the gear and you have all the access to all the equipment, you then become paralyzed of like, wow, I could do anything, but I don't know what to do. But when you have just this one little item and you're like, this is all I can work with, what can I make with this? It somehow makes you more creative, and it pushes your boundaries of what you're allowed to do and all that kind of stuff. And then you can justify, all right, now I actually deserve like this higher end stuff because I've pushed this stuff to the limit. So I'm big on starting small.
Yeah. There's so many things I wanted to say about all of that. My dad used to play a lot of instruments. He played like 10 or 12 instruments, but all of them absolutely terribly. It wasn't until like I had my roommate who was like, his name's Chris, and he was like really, really good at like an artist. And I was like, wow. There's a massive difference between how my dad played, but how he played. But he was very, very good at being able to at least experiment and try to. He understood the instruments. He understood how to play them, and he would do his best. It just would never sound good, but it was very interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, I think the same thing can come with like photography, right? Some people I know, I have friends that just like, I want every lens for any situation. It doesn't matter if I'm going to be underwater, upside down on the moon. I'm going to have a lens ready for that. And I'm just like, look, get 2 lenses and use the crap out of them and learn those things. Learn those 2 like inside and out. You're not like a professional photographer. You're just a hobbyist. just don't overdo it, man. And it's really hard to pull yourself down from wanting to get everything.
Yeah, I was in San Francisco for a little while, and there was this photography shop that I was able to like rent this like $2,000 like lens for like $30 or something like that over the weekend. And I was like, yeah, this is great. And I just shot like a whole video of me like climbing up buildings and stuff like that, and just doing dangerous stuff. But it was still like really cool because it's like I can get this really expensive thing and I can just pay like really minimal for it. And that was exciting enough because I don't know, those lenses are ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, they are.
Well, while we're in the topics of like growth through your podcast and like how you started and stuff like that, what were some of the early days where you're like, wow, I can't believe I did that? And then like, how has it changed to like, as you were growing?
Like the first wow moment of my podcast. That was actually the release weekend. I think I released it on like a Thursday or something, and then there was a conference on Friday, Saturday that weekend, and I spoke at that conference to try to. I wanted to, give the people like a good piece of information, but then like, hey, if you want to hear more, check out my podcast, right? So it was kind of a double thing. But even before getting on stage, somebody said, wow, I had 4 episodes out on that first release, right? I listened to all 4 episodes, and I can't wait for the next one. And this was a total stranger. And the first time that a stranger tells you you're doing great, they love what you're doing, is, I think, memorable for all of us as creators, because it's not your mom, it's not your friends, it's not your family, whatever, just being nice. It's somebody who you don't know. And I was like, wow, that is cool. It makes me feel like I've got something important going on here, and I should work on it if the stranger likes it. And I don't even know how they found it, because I barely told anybody at that point, right? So it was really cool. That was a great moment.
How did you do the first like 3 episode release when you first did your podcast, or was it like you did like the first episode, then a week or a month later you did the second episode?
I did 4 episodes on day 1, and then just kept going every 2 weeks for a few years.
2 weeks, every 2 weeks, yeah, okay. And then I guess most recently it's been pushed back to about like once a month. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a kind of a work-life balance sort of thing. I was drowning with just stress and all kinds of other stuff, so I pulled it back, and I was able to. I feel good about life now, so
good.
It was a good move, because it was either like no episodes because I'm totally broken, or just half as many, and I think half as many is a good move.
Yeah. So that's actually a good question. So like when I started, I only did 1 episode, the first release, but I had planned like, okay, let me do at least like 4 interviews, so I at least have a month's worth of content, and I can start rolling it out. Do you have like an amount of like content that you have like kind of staged up already that it can be released, or is it kind of like, do you feel like you're always pressured to be like, okay, we gotta get this episode out this month or whatever, and it's like pretty close to the wire?
I'm usually bad at getting ahead, and I'm usually just working every month just on the next one. So that's just how it's been for years. But just recently, I was just like, I'm tired of like barely getting it, and now I've got a good buffer of episodes in the queue.
Oh, excellent! It's exciting to hear. So I want to talk about the book that you had mentioned. You mentioned a few different books. You mentioned actually a few books. So the 2 that I've been reading is the Superfans one, as well as the Make Noise that you had recommended. So the for Make Noise, how has that book like inspired you to do what you're doing? I can easily tell, like, just by reading it, like, you know, the way that the author is speaking about creating a story and the way that you create stories through your podcast, as opposed to how mine currently is, where it's just like, it's just the interview process that, you know, you take those interviews and then you then create an entire storyboard around it. How has that book helped you or like guided you on that path? And like, what are some ways that you create a story just from an interview?
So Make Noise came sort of in year 3 or 4 of my podcasting journey.
Wow. Okay.
And at that point, I already like learned everything.
Mhm.
And I learned it from like a ton of different sources. And Make Noise was like, this is everything you should know in one book. I love how I wish I had this when I started, because this would have been just so perfect. And it wasn't like stretched across like 10 different books and podcasts and articles and courses and stuff. It was just all in one. So it really wasn't the one that was inspiring to me. It was the one that was just like, this is the perfect thing. And I think this is, Make Noise is a book about how to podcast. And I think what a lot of people do is they get tripped up on the mechanics of it. What mic do I use? What hosting provider? How do I, get the mechanics of it? And the mechanics of it, you really can just learn in like a weekend or even a few hours if you're halfway savvy already with recording equipment. That isn't the problem for podcasters. It's never been the problem for podcasters. The problem is being interesting, finding something that is really interesting for other people to listen to. People turn off bad shows to listen to great shows, right? So how do you make a great show? And that's what Make Noise is all about. This is what goes into making a great show. And that I thought was just so incredible. And even like just, it's like, here's how to market a show. But wait a minute, before we get into marketing, the first step of marketing is having a great show. Because if I get someone and I sit them down and I have them listen to this, that's great marketing. I've got someone that I've got right in front of the show. But if they don't like it, even after like 30 minutes of listening, they're never going to come back. And so we just wasted all our effort by sitting them down here. So it's important to have a great show that once you sit them down, they're like, wow, this is great. I want to keep listening to this. And I'm so excited I found this. And so that book kind of just lays all that out for you and clarifies like all the stuff you should be focusing on as a podcaster. And those are honestly the hardest things to do as a podcaster, is make something great, build an audience for it, and sustain it, I think, is kind of the last step, either making money off of it or not getting burned out from it and having some sort of value that you're getting out of it.
Yeah. And I think that you've been like tremendously successful at like, you know, taking your, building a community all around your podcast. You know, you go on your Discord, is like, how many members do you have on your Discord?
20,000.
Yeah. 20,000 members. Right. So, you know, I guess the question is like, because I'm also ridiculously analytical. I'll read 3 books to figure out how to read 1 book, or you know what I mean? So like I'm just reading too much content, you know, at a certain point I'm like, I just need to start and do the thing. But I want to kind of hear if you've had any strategies and things that you've had to like encourage the people that are listening to your content, your fans and stuff like that, and have them like go to become like a super fan.
Yeah, so Superfans is the other book you mentioned. That's by Pat Flynn. He was a podcaster that I listened to a ton of, which is, he has a show called Smart Passive Income. And it's just like, he just interviews person after person after person of how they were able to start a business and have it be passive income. And it was just so inspiring to listen to him. But Pat is just such a guy who's so down to earth and so honest and so kind. And he's a person that you really just trust and is genuine and is just such a nice person. And like that came across to me as just like, well, I could be friends with him. I think he could be friends with everyone on the planet. Like he's just such a friendly person. And so he was doing things while I was listening. Like, I'm going to this conference. If you see me, I'm the one with the red backpack. I always wear a red backpack at a conference or something like this. And there was always these little things that he would do to help you connect to him, right? So he had these places online that you could hang out with him and all this kind of stuff. and then he created this book called Superfans, which is like, I think the premise is if you had 1,000 true fans, and that's all you really needed to really sustain yourself, right? So if you had 1,000 people that were, giving you $10 a month from Patreon or whatever like that, that's enough to live off of, right? So it's 1,000 is a lot smaller than if you think about just like, well, I need millions of fans before I can finally make it. No, 1,000. That's it. But you need them to be truly, truly into what you're doing. Like they just are there for you 100% on what you're doing. And so how do you take a fan from just a normal fan to a super fan? Well, you can make those connections with them. You can hang out with them. You can give them gifts. You can you just be nicer to them and do things to them where you're just like continually supplying value to their lives and improving their lives. And when they're just like, okay, you've done so much for me. I will do anything for you in return. And sometimes that comes across just as giving someone a podcast, because it's just like, this has been life-changing. This is so informative. This resonates with me in a way that I'm like, I only think this way. I don't know who else thinks this way. Or somebody told me, like, I accidentally learned so much from your show. And that's why I got stuck with it. And because every episode I accidentally learned so much, I'm like, it's not accidental. I'm putting all this education in the storytelling process so that you can learn, but have fun at the same time. And I like that feeling that you're having fun and you're enjoying a good story, but also learning at the same time. And that's kind of my secret sauce of how I want to structure my show. But it does provide quite a bit of value to people where they feel like, I'm having fun, I'm listening to this, but I'm also getting tons of value through education and such. And that just, it comes back to me in quite a big way. People return the favor in huge ways. So it's really great.
Awesome. Yeah. There's been multiple road trips to the US where we'll put on like your content and be like, let's just listen to this for like a few hours as we're driving through. And it's just always been like, it's been an easy ride. But yeah, you being able to create the content and being able to actually shift and like educate people is really unique. You also like share a lot of your personality. One of the more recent episodes with the dubsteps and like talking about how there's dolphin noises and like they're communicating. That was like super, super unique. I'm like, cause I'm a big fan of dubstep. So I was like, okay. And he's like, there's dolphins in this. I was like, what is he talking about? And like, I kind of like stepped back and I thought that was really unique and interesting.
Well, this is one of the things that I do with my show as well, is like, if I'm going into a community that I really don't know much about, which like dubstep is just not a music genre I know much about, I'm going to immerse myself in it so much. So, there's stories where I think there was one where the guy was, I think, running from the law. And it told me what checkpoint, on the freeway that the police finally caught up with him or something. And so I went on Google Maps and I did that exact same route from where his hotel was to where he got arrested. And I just went every single picture all the way to imagine I'm driving that same route, right? Or if there's some sort of city in some country that someone lives in, I'm going to walk the city. I'll bring up YouTube, like walking tours of their city, and I'll just watch how that city moves and breathes. And same with that dubstep one. If I'm going to be doing an episode on dubstep, I'm going to listen to hundreds of hours of dubstep. I'm going to go to a dubstep concert if it's available. I'm going to do everything I can to get to the bottom of like, what's the core thing? What's the essence here? What do people really like about this? And then I think then I can, from that space, I can then speak intelligently about this whole thing, or even bring in things. Because what I love is like someone like, if you're into dubstep, and this is an episode about dubstep, I like being able to teach you something about dubstep that you had no idea, even though you'd be way into it, right? And so my goal is to get the people who are obsessed about this particular topic even more knowledge, and not just be like, oh, this is a 101 view of it, or a very candy taste of it. I don't know. It's just like, let's get deep, and I love that feeling of getting deep. And so that's always been really fun for me to find something that even the most diehard fans don't know about.
Nice. I forget. And I think in the episode, like you spoke with somebody that had like gotten at. They were actually physically in. I think it was Excision's house or whatever. Did you contact Excision? But like, hey, can I go in your house and just like feel what this was like?
Well, I reached out to all the people that were involved, but nobody got back to me. So I mean, I tried messaging in Excision and all this, but it just no response. So
that's so cool. Nice.
I wasn't gonna go to his house though.
Do you know your success rate for like reaching out to like people that you're like, oh, this person would like maybe never talk to me, and then but you do it anyways? Like I've noticed that I always sleep so much, like I wake up more excited the next day after I send out a bunch of like emails or something like, oh, I might interview this person, this could happen, and then like if it happens, amazing, but if not, like at least like I'm excited for the next morning. Have you ever like had an interview with somebody where it's like, I didn't believe this was gonna happen, and then it happens?
Yeah, many times. I mean, I think the way I like to structure the show is I want to get the guests on that would never talk before or will never talk, right? So, the Russian state hacking group, the Chinese state hacking group. This would probably be the most epic, ideal guest ever to hear them talk about how they hacked the United States, for instance, right? And all this sort of stuff. Like they would never ever talk. So it's just, the show is specifically structured around trying to get those ghost guests that would never ever talk. And so by design, I'm sending out emails constantly, which is just always a no, or more likely even just ignored and not even a no. And it's like, yeah, man, I work for an intelligence agency for this country. There's no way I could ever say this information to you, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Is like, if there ever is a time where there's a story that hits the public or something like this that is available, and other times I'll meet some FBI or CIA agents at a conference. I'll just run into them. I'm like, tell me a story. Let me get the mic out. They're like, no, I can't tell you a story. It's like, okay, there's got to be something that's hit the public that you were involved in, and you could just tell me what was known from the public perspective. But because you're the one that was there, it'd be nice to hear your voice, right? So we try to find that common ground of where it is that you can speak, even though you can't speak. And sometimes that does exist. But yeah, the most surprising one is when I was at DEF CON, and I had thought, right, like I'm saying now, oh, it'd be nice to get Chinese, nation-state hackers on the show. Well, at the time, I thought it'd be nice to get the NSA on the show, but that's never going to happen. They're never going to admit to their hacks. And I was at DEF CON one year, and I got a tap on the shoulder, and I'm like, what's up? And he's like, do you want the NSA on your show? And I was like, what? Yeah, but who do you know? And he's like, well, the NPR just came through and got all kinds of approvals to even get General Nakasone to speak on the show, which is the head of NSA at the time. And so since we just went through and got all these approvals, I can get you through and get approvals as well because I work there. And I was like, holy cow. So he was really nice and connected me with the cyber team there and the PR team. And yeah, we got all the approvals, and that was the episode called Glowing Symphony and Operation Glowing Symphony. And yeah, the NSA explained how they hacked ISIS, like the whole operation. And it's like, what? I'd never thought that they would ever come on the show and explain exactly how it's done. And that one, even like the stipulation was General Nakasone wants to approve this before it goes out, so don't publish it until we get approvals. And so I actually had to get I don't know if he listened himself. I'm pretty sure it's probably one of his like handlers or something listened and said, what do you think of it? Okay, well, I think we should take out this one bit or something. So they sent me like one edit to change, and that was it.
Oh, nice. Did you actually go to Fort Meade, or like did they come to you, or?
No, and when NPR did go to Fort Meade, they couldn't bring in the recording equipment, and the NSA provided their own recording equipment and then gave her the recordings.
You've also reached a point in your podcast where like you're the top percentile for podcasting and content creation, or in the area. I noticed that you're now releasing content in Spanish, which I think is like a ridiculously strong strategy. Like Mr. Beast, like once he got all the way to the top, then he added languages and made those channels, and then it also like exponentially increased the amount of followers and stuff like that he's had. Was the strategy to improve your top funnel fans that would come in as a result as having more people, and like how much overhead does it take to add more languages to your content?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. I've spoken with studio after studio after studio, like, can you do this? And it's very complex, and nobody really wants to. A couple people. I mean, there's always a volunteer that emails me and says, hey, can I make your, shows in this language? I was like, good luck. There's no way you're going to do it. It requires a ton of effort. Number one, we're talking 10,000 words to translate. So that's going to take you like 4 hours just to translate it into English, or it's from English to whatever language you're doing. And then we have multiple guests and different news clips and such like that in there. So are you going to have different voices that are going to be, narrating each part? And there's like 20 songs involved. Like it's a whole process. And then the narration, that's gonna take a while, and you're gonna have a lot of struggles with that if you're not used to doing that. So it's quite a thing. So people try it, but they don't get very far just on their own. And eventually, I did connect with a studio in Spain, which can do the translations for me. And yeah, that's quite pricey, and it takes quite a long time. In fact, it takes them just as long to translate an episode from English to Spanish as it does for me to make a whole episode. And so I don't know if they'll ever catch up. But it's quite a thing. And so Spanish and German are going to be the first two that I focus on. And hopefully that does increase the listenership and just the spread and awareness of the world. That's really all the goal is right now. It's not so much... podcasting doesn't make a lot of money when you have smaller audiences. So unless it becomes a big audience, it's really not going to be anything profitable. But it's fun to experiment with new things, and to hear different Jack Rhysiders around the world is funny as well.
No, that's terrific. I think that's brilliant. I did a talk at B-Sides Columbia. It was about 2 years ago. And one of the complaints was like, we don't have enough like YouTube videos that are in Spanish to learn cybersecurity content. Like we have to produce our own stuff because there's just not as much stuff. That's what they were saying. So I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I wonder if we take our content and make it into Spanish, should it be more viral there, and like all of the Latin and the Spanish speaking countries as well. German's also really smart too, because you have like CCC and all the like the hackers in Germany, which I think is Germany is quite a popular place to listen to my show. Now the AI is coming along, right? So that's not quite here yet, though. Like if you translate from English to another language with AI, it's like 95% of the way there. And then when you translate, and then you narrate that using an AI narrator, then they're only going to get like 95% of it right as well, right? So now that's cumulative. So that's kind of more like 80% value, or 80% of the way there. I don't know if you've listened to anything in a foreign language, and they're like, yeah, that's not quite right. The tone is incorrect. They're too robotic in the way they're talking. This is the translation didn't come through just right, and so it's just not there to my standard for AI. And I think maybe 3 years from now it probably will be, and that'll be fun when you can just switch push a button on your player and be like, just show it to me in my language, because I think that'll probably happen soon. Yeah, I think that's going to happen real soon. But I would even guess it's going to happen the next year or two. I think it's going to happen way sooner. We had like Will Smith eating that spaghetti AI stuff like last year or the year before. Like really recent. Now they're making it look like the girl in the video who's looked like she was at TEDx. Yeah,
it's amazing how far it's come, but it's still at this kind of 80% of the way there situation, and getting that over that last mile is going to be something.
I mean, I think with any tools, you know this better than I. Like, you just gotta accept like a specific percentage of like shit. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, like I've been using, because I was doing my edits and it was taking literally 40, 50 hours just to do. We'll take the 2-hour content and then we'll cut it up into anywhere between like 60-second short form content, and I was able to do about 31 different pieces of content, but that took like 50 hours. And then we're using like Opus Clip, and then I just give it the video and then boom it up, produce like 150. And it's not good to the point where it's like, this is exactly what I would clip, or like this is how I would edit it, but it's the degradation's like maybe like 10-20%. It's like, okay, it's good enough for me to save the 40 to 50 hours that it would originally take. So for me, it's all right.
Yeah, that is a hard trade-off for creators.
Yeah, you'll go really deep into like one area and be like, it's not perfect. Like, I want to add more things. Like every time like I have a guest on, they'll mention names of other hackers or people. I'm like, oh, in my video, I'm gonna put a clip of them, and I'm gonna do it. So like my first few episodes, I don't know about for you, I spent so much time in the creative section, so that's like really polished. And then as I was like going a little bit down the line, I'm just getting exhausted doing all the editing and stuff. So I was like, it's been like a flow of like less polishy.
It's hard to keep that edge of like, okay, I have this quality. I think for me, I keep searching for higher quality and trying to push things beyond. So I'm glad I kept on to that. And so I use a human translator when I'm transcribing things for like just the transcription, and as well as all humans for doing the translating as well. I do use AI for quite a bit of other things though. Such as, I have a lot of artwork for each episode, and making that artwork is really a creative process. And so there's a lot of, like before AI, I was using Pinterest and I was sketching things out and I was just looking at tons and tons of artwork. And now with Midjourney, I can just say, what would it look like if somebody were to steal a bicycle on a computer? It's like, it doesn't know what's going on. So, but then it gives me like a little clue of like, oh, there might be something here. And so I can go down this like idea rabbit hole. And so Midjourney, I spend hours creating each episode artwork. And so Midjourney is just kind of one of these idea centers where I can just play with ideas there. And then once I have the idea where I'm like, oh, good idea, Midjourney. And it takes 3 hours to get to that idea. It's not like, oh, AI did this. No, it's okay, I'm going to spend 3 hours working with this tool to find the best idea. And then I have that idea and I give it to my artist and I say, okay, here, this is the idea I want to run with.
Yeah, I must have spent, I think, not as much time, but maybe like 50, 100 hours or so playing around with Midjourney when it first came out. And there definitely is an art to like doing the prompt engineer, to like being a prompt engineering, to like put the specific weights in depending on like what you want to do, that unless you actually use it or play with it, no one knows. They just think, oh, you AI'd it kind of thing. Yeah.
It seems like such a simple thing, but there can be a lot of work into it.
And that's interesting. I didn't know that your content was AI. Was it, do you sketch stuff and then feed it to Midjourney, or is it like just straight up Midjourney's interpretation of what it is that you're creating?
Yeah, there's just a lot of, I'll just take inspiration wherever I can get it, right? And so I'm just really using Midjourney for that inspiration and just being all over the board of like, what does it look like to be hacking in the rain or hacking, in your school or whatever, and trying to figure out like what imagery you think this looks like, and then, going from there. So it's really inspiration there. And I'm doing it. I'm also using AI, like ChatGPT, to do some research and to help write a couple things to just be more punchy. Like, this isn't quite as philosophical as I want it to be. Can you help me just like make it a little bit more deeper? And so it'll help me rewrite a couple things, just like a paragraph here or there. And of course, with the research, you've got to double check. Like, okay, thanks for showing me that. Like, I'll ask for intro anecdotes. Like, I just need a funny story about like maybe hacking in the 1800s or something. And it's like, oh yeah, there was a guy who used this computer to hack his apples or something. I'm like, hold on, no, this couldn't have happened in the 1800s. And so you got to really double check on this sort of thing. So it's given me quite a lot of fake things that I'm really excited about, but then I'm like, no, none of this happened. And oh, sorry, I made that up.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. This didn't happen. I'm like, why did you tell me that it happened? Why are you lying to me?
Yeah, but it is quite a powerful tool to do research with, to try to find stuff that you would never have noticed before, because it seems to have read every book and every article and everything.
Yeah, no, I think we're at a point where it's like, it's almost, I don't say a waste of time, but it's going to be silly of us to like start spending so much time like ingesting information in that way. And now it's kind of like, if you have the tool that will be able to, that knows everything, how can you best ask it to get the result that you want? And I think that's going to be like the next, the wave of like being able to utilize like human intelligence is just, the way to craft the question, and the question is going to be the most important thing in order to get what you want. So with that, do you also utilize like ChatGPT for storyboarding and stuff like that, or like guiding you in that now, or do you kind of design that out and then use ChatGPT to fill in the blank?
Yeah, I think it's more like I can craft the story pretty well in my head. And whenever I ask ChatGPT to just sort of make me a show like Darknet Diaries, but like here's the topic, it never like comes close. It's really awful. Notebook LLM is Notebook LM. The Google thing is kind of an interesting thing here. So you can give it a bunch of documents, like here's indictments and prosecution notes and all the court records. Create a podcast for me, and it is quite amazing, because now it's only referencing the documents you gave it, but it creates these two characters, this guy and this girl, that just talk back and forth like, oh, did you read the indictment? Yeah, let me tell you, we've got all the secret stuff here. Like these are some serious documents we've got our hands on, and we're gonna get into all the details. And they're just so funny. They have jokes back and forth, and you can actually listen to an actual podcast that they make from it. So Notebook LM is surprising of what it can do, but I don't think it's working in the style that I make shows with. I really have, I think, a unique style that I don't think ChatGPT or any of these other tools are able to write in my style. So I really have to train it quite a bit and have it like rewrite things for me again and again and again and again before I finally get it to write something that I think is worth my time. And so at that level, I can really only work at it with like a paragraph or two at a time, because it just can't do anything longer.
That's actually, you bring up an interesting point. So do you feel there are other podcasts similar in your type of storytelling that you have experienced, or other podcasts or content that you've like listened to that also brings you inspiration for yours? Yes.
There's a show called A Rabbit Hole. I think New York Times makes it. And I feel like it's one of the most amazing audio journeys that you could go on. It sometimes has like 3 different stories being told at once. Like you'll hear the narrator talking, and you'll also hear the guest, but the guest will be talking about something totally different. And then there'll be clips from YouTube that'll be playing somehow. And somehow these 3 stories are just like bouncing back and forth around each other. And you're like, these seem like 3 different stories that I'm listening to. And then suddenly at the end, they like all converge and all say the same thing at the end. And you're just like, holy cow, that was the most amazing way to express that point. I've never, and it's just so sonically enriching. It's kind of like Radiolab in the way that it's full of just wonderful sounds and the storytelling. And so I wish I could do something as heavy lifting as Radiolab and Rabbit Hole. I think those were pretty inspirational. There's a Irish fella named Blind Boy, and I think he's one of my favorite storytellers as far as podcasting goes. And he does it in a way that's very different than any book I've read or anything like that, or even my style. But it's just so captivating to me, and I think it takes a specific ear that I'm listening to as a storyteller, because I'm really deep into the storytelling. So when I started podcasting, I didn't know how to do storytelling at all, and so I watched all the Khan Academy. They have a course called Pixar in a Box, and it's how Pixar tells stories. And I watched some other courses and stuff online. and I actually met with some of my heroes, like a lady from Criminal and a guy from This American Life, and I met Roman Mars and some other people that are just like, really, how do you do your storytelling? And I asked them very specific questions, and I just went really deep into storytelling, right? And so you get to that point, and you're like, I've seen it all, I know all the tricks and all this kind of stuff. And then Blind Boy comes, and he tells me stories that are just like, how did you think that through? That's the most incredible storytelling I've heard in so long. That's amazing, and it gives me chills sometimes. So it is one of those things that's like, I'm now stepping on the shoulders of some of these other giants, and I'm reaching up to the new heights, it feels like. And so that's what I like about Blind Boy, is it gives me a whole new perspective on how to tell stories.
How does he tell it differently in terms of like the other storytellers that you've listened to?
So he weaves in like his personal experience with pop culture and lore and history of Ireland, and music as well. He throws in there, and sometimes art and stuff like this. So he's just kind of teaching about this, but then also mental health. And so this big swirling mass of stuff that's happening is he's teaching you about these things, but he's also telling you about his morning. He'll start out with the morning, and like, I woke up this morning and I just wanted some coffee, so I started going out, but it was really cold, and I thought, okay, it'd be too cold to walk to the store, so maybe I'll ride my bike. And so as I'm riding my bike, it was too icy, and I slipped and fell, and so I had to go back and just decide to walk. And so the story starts out like that, and you're just like, man, this is just some throwaway story. And then he goes into, like, on his walk there, on this incredible journey about like the history of art and music and stuff that he listened to on the way, and it does this thing, and you get so lost in that, and then he ends up at the store at the end, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot he was trying to go get coffee. And so when he ends up at the store, you just have this big payoff of how all this stuff comes together. And then when he gets to the coffee shop, there's like this piece of art that he was just thinking about the whole time on the way there or something. And so it's such a masterful way of throwing in this personal anecdote of something that just doesn't make any sense at first, and then having it just tie in together with the history of something, and it just sounds like he's off the cuff too, because he's like, shit, I didn't know I was going to be talking about art, paint colors for an hour. I just wanted to tell you about, man, I have like other stuff that I want to tell you about, and I ended up talking about paint colors for an hour. And so it becomes like, this wasn't even what you were trying to talk about. And then it gets even deeper because of that. And it's just so wild. It's something that I think is pretty niche, but it's definitely a show that hits me perfectly.
Is it like for these episodes, is there like a specific subject for them, or is it like he goes into like something, he just starts talking, and then it creates and starts giving value from that?
I think I started liking it because he talked about mental health and how he battles, certain demons and things that, like, especially as a creator, you hear like a bad review and you're like, oh man, I'm not as good as I used to be. And so how do you deal with that sort of thing? And so it really helped me to kind of get out of depression, get out of a rut mentally, and all this kind of stuff. And I was there for that. But then at the same time, I was like, man, this guy is the craziest storyteller I've ever heard. But yeah, he sometimes talks about his own personal mental health, and sometimes talks about art, and sometimes talks about music, and sometimes and he goes into the crazy history that you would just never expect to. That's where the history of that came from, and it's more lore-like history than it's factual history. Like, this is what we've heard over the years or something, but the history books might not have actually covered it. And it's like, well, why didn't the history books cover that? That's a really fascinating thing. And if you just think about like ripped holes in jeans, like, where is this coming from? Why do we buy clothes with holes in them to begin with? Like, what is happening here? He might like look at that and be like, I got to figure out why ripped holes in jeans ever became a thing. And so he will find like where the first hole came from and try to track it through history. And then he'll explain like, this is a context collapse. You can't go and buy ripped holes because there should be a mark of like this is when I ripped this pants, it was because I was jumping over the fence running from cops this one day, and that's an important story of mine. And you can't go to the store and buy a ripped hole and think that that's an important story of yours. It looks like you're rugged and you're running from in brambles or jumping fences or whatever because you've got ripped holes, but it doesn't have the context. The context has collapsed entirely. And that's more of kind of the stuff he gets into, which is he explains, like, what are we doing here with this stupid stuff when in reality it had a total, when, in the beginning it had a total different meaning to it. And I like that, where it's like, yeah, you're right. This makes no sense today to do it this way. There's a philosophy in there too.
Interesting. So like even in his work, he's also doing like a little bit of journalism and like investigations, right? It's not just like him speaking. Okay.
Yeah, he does quite a bit of research.
I'd like to know, like, for you and stuff like that, do you also feel like, you do a lot of like journalism and investigations when you're doing your content, and like not solely a storyteller, or that it's part of the storytelling process?
I like to think I have three hats. It's audio journalism, which is going to be a lot of research. InfoSec. I know a lot about InfoSec and hacking and cyber security. And storytelling is the third thing, right? So we have to take this journalism aspect and put it into story, but then also talk about the technology of it. And it's difficult to find somebody who has those three things to help me as well on the show. People usually have like two of the three, but not quite all three. And so, there is quite a lot of research that I'm doing in every episode to drum up the truth and to find the things that are most accurate. I really try to be as accurate as possible.
What are the next episodes, or like things that people can look forward to coming out that you have kind of in the pipeline?
Yeah, we're going to talk about stolen bikes in the next episode, and sim swapping is coming up, and old school hacking.
More sim swapping. Sim swapping seems to be very popular as of at least the last year or so. Is it still growing?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of it like this. When I grew up on the internet, it was AOL days, it was IRC days. Yeah. And back on the IRC days, Wares was popular. So we had pirating, we had cracking, we had distros, we had all kinds of interesting subculture there. And then in the like 2008-ish time, a different group of teenagers were coming up. And those teenagers were into Anonymous and 4chan. And that had its moment where Anonymous was big in the scene. But now Anonymous has died down, and IRC has died down. And so what are the teenagers doing today, right? And, well, not so much the good teenagers, but the mischievous ones online. And they're out there. And so they're out there trading, stealing usernames from users on Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and selling those. They're out there trying to hack Minecraft servers and Roblox servers, and because you can earn Robux in these games, and Minecraft servers can be for profit. And so there's ways to try to generate, steal money from these places, because that's what these kids know the most is these video games. So they're like, well, now I can use all the skills I know about this to manipulate it in ways that maybe it shouldn't, or hack it or something like that, or social engineer people to steal the whole server. Like people just take over whole Minecraft servers, and it's wild. And that's interesting. But yeah, I think it also then turns into, well, let's see how we can make money with some of these skills. And that's where things turn into like sim swapping and other money-making methods. So it's not just sim swapping. There's a lot of ways that people are making money online, teenagers. But I think it's very for-profit driven on a lot of this stuff. And that if you think about, I mean, I grew up in the good old days. We're back on IRC.
every hackers has their golden day.
That's the golden day, IRC, and then the golden days of being on 4chan and anonymous IRC channels and stuff. But this is the golden days for these kids today, and they're gonna grow up and be like, man, that was so much fun when we could do all that stuff. So we stole $1 million one night. Do you remember that? And it's like, wow, yeah, you're right. That was wild. And so these kids are going to grow up and be CEOs of companies and start their own businesses and stuff, because that's just how it goes. Like you think about all the hackers in the 90s that have grown to be CEOs, and all the anonymous kids that grew up to be owners of their own companies and stuff. So it's quite remarkable. So I don't stub my nose at it. I'm just like, yeah, that's what the opportunities are, and you're jumping in on it. Okay, be careful. Don't do too many bad things.
Are you ever like at a family like get together or like a kid's birthday, and then they're like, "Oh, we like Roblox," or like we're playing like Minecraft, and then you're like, "Hey, I know a lot about this stuff," and like you start talking about the different things that you've discovered?
Yeah, I haven't quite. I do need to dive deeper into the whole aspect of it, because there is quite a lot of toxicity in both of those games that I haven't quite experienced firsthand, that I would love to really get into those communities and see how bad it is in there.
All right. So let me ask this. So I know that you've been to DEF CON and other conferences as well. Have you gone to international conferences or even like the hacker camps?
No, I really need to. Just this month we have CCC happening, and I've been meaning to go every year, but I never make it. So hopefully next year I get up to CCC. But yeah, I do need to go to some international conferences. Maybe 2025 I'll make it out to something.
You should. I don't know what I don't know when CCC camp is, but it happens every 4 years, 1 hour north of Berlin, and it's probably the most. I'm gonna like chat about it for a second. It's like the most like communal like hacker gathering there is. You're outside, you're camping. They literally pull up fiber network from the ground, and then you have like hundreds of people coming, and they're all from like other countries. So they'll have like their own tent set up, and like each of them calls it their own like embassy. So you got the Swedes that will bring like a sauna. You have some Danish like blasting music in the middle of the night. A lot of Germans there because it's in Germany. And then the Italians, massive, like you have 50 of them. Like the camp told them you can't bring more people because they always bring so many people, but they're also making like pasta and sharing. It's like this massive community. You have to go at least one time. I'm sure you'd be a massive hit there. I
do, and the U.S. is starting to get something like that. And
tour camp, yeah,
CCC camp is definitely a premiere, but tour camp is trying to be the kind of the mini one of in the U.S., and it's worth going to that.
It's worth it. I went 1 year. It was good. What was the main part of attraction? It was something to do with paperwork. It was like a paperwork
bureaucracy.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah,
my friend did not understand what I enjoyed about that at all. But I'm like, dude, I can fill out these papers. It's like, why?
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, it's hilarious. So the tour camp is great. It's great fun.
All right. I'd like to know, I have a question here about voice collaborations. Have you ever thought about like working with a specific like known voices like Corpse or something?
My voice is just primarily deep because it's deep. Genetics, I guess.
No, I haven't yet. What would that even look like?
You could have him like play a character. I'm just brainstorming now. This is your show, you know, but like you could have him like play a character in your show or do something as a, I don't know. Yeah, maybe just a character.
Yeah, there was somebody. One of my fans reached out. She's done a lot of voice work. I think the only one I recognize. She was in Elden Ring as one of the characters, and she was like, "Anytime you need anything, let me know." And so I was trying to find a place for her. But yeah, I don't really do that many. Every now and then I'll have a need for a voice actor, but it's not so often. I try to get the actual guests to give me their real voice, because that's the best when you can hear that.
Yeah, that would make sense. How much of the calls and interviews do you like edit out versus like just take and go live? My problem is I have a hard time cutting stuff out because I'm like, oh, this is great, I love this. We're talking about this thing, and it's like not really relevant to whatever the podcast is.
Yeah, I think there's two schools of thoughts when it comes to podcasting. Like, you could have the Dan Carlin school of thought, which is every 3 months we're going to produce one episode, and it's going to be so much effort and so much work, and we're going to edit like ruthlessly and cut out and rewrite and all this kind of stuff to make just a high quality product at the end. And then there's like Gary Vaynerchuk, which is like, I'm going to make an episode every 6 hours. And it's just going to be like stream of thought right off the top of my head, who I'm meeting with for coffee, and I'll just record that and publish like 6 times a day. And yeah, it's interesting where everyone falls. For me, I do sometimes have like 4-hour long interviews, and I want to cut it down to an hour for the whole show. And typically when it is that long, I have to determine, wait, is this a two-parter? Is this worth just like twice as much time, or maybe even a three-parter, or should I cut down to one? And usually when I'm going that long, it's because I don't know the story that well, and so I'm going down a lot of side streets trying to find, like, wait, is there anything worth talking about this way? Okay, nah, I don't. It's interesting, but it's not quite as good as the rest of the stuff, so we'll skip it. And so I just flesh out like a bunch of different things. So if I don't know the story that well, I have to spend a lot more time in the interview to try to find the story. If I can research it quite a bit before, then it saves me a lot of time in the interview, and I know exactly what I want to ask all the way to unfold the story, and then I don't have to edit as much later on. But there's tons and tons of editing I do. It's a massive amount.
You know what I'm wondering now that we're talking about the editing side of stuff is like, I think on that episode I think it was the dubstep episode where they're talking about like, oh, the unreleased stuff is like sells for this much. Do you think there's like a market for your unedited like content out there?
No, I don't think so. That's like the same market as if I was to read the phone book to you, right? Like people think they'll just listen to anything I have, but I think that there's a lot of trash that I could produce. Sometimes I'll make like some real experimental stuff and send it to some friends, and some of them fly, they're okay, but then some of them they're just like, listen, I love you, but I cannot listen to this long of you just yapping on about this dumb thing. And so yeah, even the people who are the closest to me still can't tolerate some of the long yappings that I do.
This brings a great segue into the next thing I wanted to ask. So sometimes that you're fascinated by a story, but you're not sure if you should put it in there. So like the FBI one, it was about social engineering, not like the hacking side of stuff. And then there's the counterfeit money episode. And then you said like, you'll make an exception for this one. So for my podcast, sometimes I feel that like, I'm not specifically speaking to founders, but I'm talking to people like not like startup founders, entrepreneurs, but I'm talking to people that are building communities that are actually, maybe it's a CISO and stuff like that. And like it's adjacent, but it's not directly there. But there's also times where in my podcast, like I'll never be able to like interview Arnold Schwarzenegger on here because he's never been a hacker. So I'd have to like really skew away. But my question is like, do you ever feel like you might create other podcasts or there's other types of like content and interviews and things that you want to do and stories that you want to explore that you are unable to do so in Darknet Diaries?
Yeah, so there's that book we were talking about earlier, Make Noise, and in there the author says, come up with a 10-word or less description of your show, and that's the lens of your show. And so my 10-word description is true stories from the dark side of the internet. So there you go. It has to be a true story to begin with, right? If we're talking about fictional stories, people bring me all kinds of made-up stories. It doesn't fit my show, so that's immediately rejected. It has to be true stories. And it's nice that I have this 10-word description to be like, this is what every episode is going to fit into, this lens. It has to go through this lens. And it is nice to just be like, okay, that's cool, but that has nothing to do with computers, so I'm not going to bring it in. Because there was some guy that said he was followed by the FBI for like 10 years. And I was like, at what point does it go onto the dark side of the internet, right? He was just following you into cafes and stuff. There's no internet aspect to this. And so it is kind of nice to make that call, be like, nope, this one I'm not going to pursue because it just doesn't do it. But I think at the end of the day, the show is something that I want to listen to. I started it because I couldn't find this show, and I really like podcasts, and so I was like, I want to make this just so I can hear these stories, and that's I'm satisfying myself first and foremost. And so if there's something that's just like super curious to me, that is maybe adjacent to the dark web, or not even dark web, but just the dark side of the internet. I like that much better than dark web. Just the shadowy stuff that goes on. If it's somewhat adjacent, so for one, like you said, one episode I had a counterfeiter on. He was making counterfeit money. It's not quite dark side of the internet, but there is a dark side to it, a dark side of printing money in a garage. That's fascinating, just to kind of hear how he goes through the process of finding the paper and the inks and running from the law and trying to escape and stuff like that. It caught my fascination in a way that I was like, wow, this is a really, really, really good story. Does it fit in with my show? I'm not sure, but I love it so much that I'll let this one pass. And yeah, a couple times I've made an exception, but yeah, that's kind of the way I think it through.
Have you ever wanted to be like have everything like really adjacent to it, where it's like this is not fitting in at all, but like I want to at least talk to these people because I think the story's interesting, regardless if my current audience would find it interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you start getting adjacent with social engineering stories, right? So you've got social engineering is where, you know, we want to test the physical security of your building to make sure it's secure. And so then there's someone like, well, I'll see if I can sneak in. And they try to sneak in, but they can't. The doors are locked. So they're like, okay, what if I convince the front desk that I'm here for maintenance and I need to get into the electrical room? And I have like a lineman's phone or something like that to show like, oh, I look like a maintenance worker. And that's social engineering, right? And so you take that and it's like, well, okay, well, what about social engineering someone to scam them out of money or sell them something that they don't necessarily have, right? So there's the story of selling the Brooklyn Bridge, the Eiffel Tower. And this is like, okay, is that anything to do with the dark side of the internet? No, it's scamming. And it is fascinating to see that that's how a social engineer could work. You could say, like, I think the story was the Eiffel Tower is like, oh, this thing is costs more money to maintain than it does to like actually bring us this money. So the cities decide to scrap it, and I'm part of that commission. I'm being commissioned to try to find a buyer for it. So I know you're a scrap metal buyer. Would you like to buy the scrap metal that was going to be the Eiffel Tower when we knock it down? And somebody took them up on it. They said, yeah, I'll buy the Eiffel Tower. So somebody paid money for the Eiffel Tower, and then that guy just disappeared and left town. And it's funny, right? Somebody sold the Eiffel Tower at some point through a scam. And that is sort of adjacent as well, adjacent in the sense of social engineering. And I have to really follow that line down the road to get there. But I think that's just something that's fascinating to me of how our brains can be tricked and in different ways, online and off, I suppose. Maybe I need to rewrite my 10-word description.
I've been rewriting mine for a few times because I'm like, well, I want to include this because I still think it's like good content that people would be interested in hearing, but I don't know. At this point, like I'm kind of, since I'm so new, it's like I barely have an audience. So like the one or two people, I'm like, hey, what else do you want to listen to? What do you want to hear? They're like anything. It's like, all right, I'm really flexible where I'm at right now, so it's a bit relaxing, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I like Tim Ferriss's suggestion, which is if you wait until your show is good to start, you started too late. Start it early when you suck, your show sucks, everything sucks, and build from there. Keep growing. And I think developing your skill in public is really cool too, because people like seeing you progress as well as you just progressing.
Yeah, they want to see the growth and stuff like that. They like that, and if they don't, then why are they watching? Like, like what are you doing? Additionally, like I would listen to Tim. I didn't even know Tim Ferriss had a podcast series. I was doing my research of like, okay, if I'm gonna start, like, how do I do this? And like, of course I know his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, but I found his podcast. I'm like, okay, great, let me listen to this. And I was listening to other podcasters because I wanted to know, am I talking too much? Like some of the podcasters, they'll just ask questions, or like they'll do interviews, they'll just ask questions, that's it. Ask another question, that's it. And I'm like, I talk about me, is that bad? And then he'll talk about himself. I'm like, okay, maybe it's just different styles. So I think you have to like absorb a lot of different ones to be able to figure out which one you're more comfortable with and how you feel in terms of building that.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking to start a podcast, I was listening to tons of shows, and I was specifically listening for picking out what parts I like to try to bring over to my thing. So you really have to be like this tastemaker of like, oh, I like this aspect of this kind of podcast, and I want that to be in my podcast. So the musical element of my show, that was a big thing, and I was listening very closely to how many songs people put in, how long of a gap between talking here and there, and the cadence of it, and there's the movement. And so I bring that in, and then, okay, here's what an intro sounds like. Here's what an exit sounds like. Here's how long things go. And finding all the things that I like the most and bringing that into my world, I think was the best. And honestly, there's no one that can do you better than you can do you. And so the more genuine you are at how you think things would work for you, then I think the better your show's going to be. So always be genuine to yourself.
Yeah, that's so hard to do when you don't even know yourself when you're podcasting, right? Like,
Yeah,
who am I as a host, right?
And it's part of that self-discovery.
I have to be like, oh, let me just try this out. And it's like, well, I love that. Or like, oh, that was terrible. I'm never doing that again, kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember when I was first starting, I wanted a specific voice to sound like. I wanted to sound like Rami Malek in Mr. Robot. And I tried and tried. I couldn't get the voice. And I asked a voice coach. I said, how's the trick to sound like this? And they told me, oh, that guy's got severe insomnia. He has not slept for days. That's what his voice sounds like. So I was like, oh, okay. So I stayed up till like 2 a.m., got really sleepy, and then turned on the mic to record like an episode or two. And that was brutal because the next day I had to edit, and I was like, oh man, I can't get the right tone again and all this sort of thing. And gosh, it's just so exhausting to be up that late to record. And what am I doing? Recording at my worst, right? You'd think you'd want to record at your best. And so I tried that, and I was like, that's not for me. And then I'd listen to someone else like Jad Abumrad from Radiolab. I'm like, okay, I want to talk like him. So I tried to mimic the way he writes and his voice sounds, and that didn't quite work for me. And so then I tried Ira Glass from This American Life. I want to talk like him. And I tried Scott Carrier, and I want to talk like him. And I tried all kinds of people, Rod Serling and the rest of the story, that old radio show, and so much more, Malcolm Gladwell. And I tried to write like a whole episode based on how this person would write the show and how they sound as they're narrating. And even though I tried spitting image of it, not many people say, hey, you're copying this person. They don't really hear it. Every now and then I'll hear like, oh, this reminds me of this one show, but they never tell me about the other 6 shows that I tried to copy, right? So I really tried to find my voice in there, and I couldn't find it in any of these people. But after I tried on like 20 different voices and 20 different writing styles, that's when I discovered, here is my unique writing style. Here's the thing I'm most comfortable with, the thing I like the sounds of it and the way I like to narrate and such like that. And I found my own unique voice in there and unique style only from trying on everyone else's. So it took me like 40 episodes before I felt comfortable in my own style.
Okay, great. I think I got like 29 more episodes to figure myself out. My first interview was with Jordan Wines, co-founder of Vector 35 and creator of Binary Ninja. And he speaks so fast, and like I responded so fast, and now I'm like on all of my episodes now, I'm just like, am I just speaking so quickly because my first guest spoke so quickly? So now I just go back and forth, because every time I hear myself in my podcast episodes, I'm like, I need to slow down, and I just get like upset. I'm like, I need to slow down, and like it's at that point.
Yeah, it takes a while to find yourself.
I'm gonna have to keep at it. I think I got 29 more episodes for it. But another question. So you've been working on your podcast. At least the last interview that I heard from you was from last year with Hack the Box, and I think you said that you were working on your podcast full time. At what point were you able to shift over to be able to work on it full time, and like being able to be in a financial situation where that was possible? And how did you feel, and what was going on at the time, or right before what was going on?
Yeah, I think it took a year. I think 9 months into it is when I first started earning like my first few dollars, and then I thought, okay, this has got potential. I think if I got $1, maybe I can get $2, and that sort of thing. Is my mentality is like, going from 0 to 1 is the hardest part, but now doubling that is not going to be so hard. I could just put twice as many episodes out, or put twice as many ads in, or something like that, right? So it was really just, okay, cool. I've finally hit 1. I went from 0 to 1, and now I can just keep moving. Yeah, that was about the 9-month mark. And then about 1 year is when I felt like I could sustain myself. And so that was around 20,000 listeners to 50,000 listeners is when I finally was able to, not so much make money on the show, but at least make the show pay for itself, and a little bit like ramen kind of meals, ramen level of living. And yeah, it just kept growing from there. So a few years later, things were good enough where I could buy my dream mic and pay for a producer and pay for an editor and this sort of thing, because I was doing it all myself for the first couple years because I just couldn't afford it any other way. And so yeah, now I've got a nice comfy situation where I can hire more people and get more help and stuff like that.
Okay, nice. And then the amount of revenue, is it based on the number of episodes that you're producing, or is it based on other types of things? And like, what's the revenue model? Where are the revenue model streams coming from?
There are ads in the episodes, and the sponsors pay. And there's two kinds of ways to do ads. We'll do new episode ads, so they'll pay for new episodes, or we'll after like 30 days we'll take out that ad and we'll say who wants the back catalog episodes, right? And so we've got different sponsors that say, yeah, I'll take some ads in the back catalog. So yeah, this way I can constantly be refreshing ads in the old episodes, right? So it's not a baked-in version, which is what some are, where you just put the ad in and you just forget it and it stays there forever. I've got dynamic ad insertion technologies. Hosting providers provide this, and I can swap ads in and out as much as I want. And so an ad will go in for the duration that they're paying for it, and then it pops out, and then a new sponsor comes in. And so there's always the back catalog is always getting more and more money because we just keep swapping ads.
And then are you able to set the price for how much those ads are on the hosting platform? And can you say which platform you're using?
I use PRX. I was using Megaphone. Libsyn also does dynamic ad insertion, Blueberry as well. Yeah, setting the price is all done by me. I have an ad team that I work with, and they anytime a sponsor reaches out to me, I connect them with my ad team, and then they negotiate the price. And the price is very much supply and demand. If there's not very many slots available, the price goes up. And if there's a lot of slots available, the price goes down. So it fluctuates. And there just seems to be more and more demand for it. So I'm doing pretty well.
Nice. That's exciting. And then so you eventually started upgrading from the smaller ramen meals to be able to pay for new things. You have money based in ads revenue as well as through sponsors. Is there any other revenue streams that you have besides those two?
Yeah, there's Patreon, which is becoming its own thing. It's like, Patreon is kind of where it started, but then Apple Podcasts is like, oh, we can make it so that we can charge, users directly. So in Apple Podcasts, there's a premium version. Now Spotify is trying to get that as well. So there isn't one place to do this. But then when you have, all the other apps seem to be jumping in, right? You've got YouTube Premium, so you can subscribe to someone extra on there. And you've got Twitch Premium, which I'm not on Twitch, but I mean, you can imagine. And then Instagram Premium, Twitter Premium. Like, if people like what you're doing, why tell them go to this site way over here and register an account instead of just being like, hey, listen, I know you're a big fan of my show. If you want to support me, my hand's open, but no pressure. And they can support you right there on Twitter if they want. And not so much to unlock like all kinds of secret content, but just like, hey, if you think that what I'm giving you is valuable, then you can give back through this way. And so that's something that I'm going to be enabling in the next, or exploring more in the next year. So it's not just one place for that, but that's the second revenue stream, which is just listener supported. And then the third one is t-shirts. So I make a lot of artwork for the show, which is just kind of a fun thing that I started doing from the beginning and have a lot of fun just making art. And that's turned into its own like t-shirt shop, and there's like 50 different designs in there as stickers and hats and stuff as well. So it's not just branding the show, but just a lot of cool designs that just spring out of what I'm making.
Nice. How much can you talk about the amount of money that you're making, the revenue that you're making on the shirts and the clothing and stuff like that? Yeah,
the shirts are about $10,000 a year in profits. So at first, I have an artist that makes these shirts for me or these designs for me. And so at first the goal was to support the artist, make enough money to pay for the artist. And then once that was going, I was like, listen, any extra money that comes in, I'm just going to like keep sending you like all this money and just keep sending me like shirt designs back. And I'm the one who comes up with the idea for each shirt. He doesn't come up with any ideas at all. And so he just kind of executes on my ideas. And at some point, it just became too many iterations of like, man, we're doing like, 4 shirts a month here, new ideas. I can't keep up with this. I got a podcast to run. I can't make 10 shirts a month or whatever. So I was just like, so I pulled back from that. And then the profits just started going up on the shirt shop. And so from there, I just redid the whole shirt shop. So I spent $10,000 on a company to refresh the whole page and to make it look good. I'm not entirely satisfied with how it looks. It doesn't feel like a $10,000 upgrade, but it's better. And so I wasn't totally excited about this change, but so that kind of set me back a year, right? I think coming up next is something where I would like to once again just have a solid amount of new shirts coming in and new designs and new artists art and into the shop, and then marketing that as well. And so if there's a way to exchange nickels for dimes, that would be great. So if I take out a $5 Facebook ad and it makes me $10 in revenue, that's a great exchange, and maybe I'll start doing next year, just to kind of have that be its own thing. And if I can increase the t-shirt shop sales 5-fold, that would be a fun goal for next year.
Yeah, sounds terrific. What's the highest percentage of revenue that you guys are bringing in? Like which of the revenue models?
The ads and the episodes.
The ads and the episodes. Okay, got it. What has been your most fruitful interactions in terms of your personal life as well as with Darknet Diaries?
Personal life, I've recently started working out about a year ago, and that's been really helpful.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been really taking it seriously, as well as food intake and such, just lowering sugar as much as I can and increasing the protein, and a lot of healthy gut stuff as well, like yogurt and kimchi and things like that. The gut has like 200 million neurons. It's like a second brain, and it can think for itself. It needs to be taken care of. But I think before that, meditation was probably a big thing personally. I listen to a lot of meditation and do a lot of meditation, and it's really good to connect with myself and listen to myself and understand my true self, and you sort through feelings and emotions and philosophies and ideas and find yourself there. And I think that was really helpful. Professionally, I think I've had quite a lot of fun going to these conferences and meeting people. It's always really invigorating. I think it was invigorating going to conferences even without having a show, just seeing everybody else doing all the stuff and how much they've worked on, what project they've been working on and what they're showing. It's just like, dang, I want to get involved with that, and I want to get involved with that. And it's always so much fun. But it's just really special when I meet the fans as well, and it has its own level of energy that it brings me that can pull me out of whatever depression I'm in at the time, and just like pick me up, and so I'll be back to soaring once again. So conferences are just great fun for me.
Nice. Yeah. There's other like those going to DEF CON or the conferences. I don't know how the most recent DEF CON was, but like usually when I'll go, I'll see some talks or I'll meet some people. I'll just hear about what they're doing research wise. And I'm like, damn, everything's exciting. I'm like, what the hell have I been doing this entire year? I don't have anything to talk about or nothing as interesting. And yeah, there's some years where you do get to be able to speak, and that's always fun. But has there been any like advancements at DEF CON that you've like seen as of maybe this year, last year, or something like that coming up that you're like, oh, this is exciting?
So at this last DEF CON, I had a party, and that was a wild thing. It was a new venue, so nobody was sure what in the world was going to happen, and I decided. So when I go to these conferences, I wear a disguise. I have a big black hat. I've got sunglasses. I've got a bandana around my face. I look like a bandit, jumping off a train, and I do that for privacy reasons. I don't want people to know what I look like, and so when I had this party, I gave out 700 of these exact same disguises, and so everybody who came in looked exactly like me. And so nobody knew which one was me, and it was so much fun because it was like it took me an hour to convince like a few people, no, it's me, it really is me. And they're like, no, it's not you. You look like everyone else. I'll find them. And I'm like, okay. And it was hilarious. I had such a fun time. It was Thomas Crown Affair in there where everyone was dressed the same, and yeah, it was just such a funny experience because of that.
Are you gonna do that again this year, you think?
No, that was so much work. Yeah, this is the problem. Like that took 3 months of planning. And then I did a keynote at SaintCon this year, and that took 3 months of prepping as well. And so it's just like, what am I doing spending 6 months of the year on these events when I could be like I could be writing a book, I could be building a course, I could be doing anything like that's got this longevity effect to it. But instead I'm like creating this magic moment for just the 1,000 people that happen to be there. And yeah, it's fun to make that magic moment. That's part of the superfans idea, right? Is just making something crazy that you had to be there for it. And if you we're like best friends for life. But it does take a lot of energy from me to make these events.
Yeah, I think you actually touched on the thing that would be very interesting to start moving towards, at least for your career, is that, yeah, start doing creating some courses or books. So have you considered doing that for 2025 even?
So courses were something I wanted to do from the get-go, but I've kind of abandoned the idea. I really love the idea of teaching, but it's not the idea of teaching, which is like, here is how to accomplish this thing. It's not the teaching I want to do anymore. I think that kind of teaching is simple. It's not simple. It's hard, but I want to reach something that's even harder, which is inspiring teaching, right? It's like I don't care about this subject. I don't care about any of this stuff. But then wait a minute, let me show you something. Let me show you something that I think you might care about. And that opens up a whole new paradigm in their head, and they're just like, whoa, I didn't know any of this existed in life. Tell me more. And then I'm like, okay, great. There's a whole bunch of other people who will teach you all the stuff you want to know. Run with it. And so that's again that 0 to 1 idea, right? Of not knowing anything about this, not thinking there's anything deep to maybe the cybersecurity world, and thinking I like computers, but you know I don't think I could be a hacker because that doesn't exist. So I'll abandon my dreams, and then I show you, no, there's all these jobs that you can be a hacker and get paid for it. And then there's just like, well, I had no idea. Or there's a lot of people who come to me, they're like, I was into computers as a teenager, but I thought it was just a dumb toy. And now you're showing me like there's a ton of things that I can do professionally to satisfy my interest and curiosity and the stuff I love doing without it and having it and get paid for it. And so people were just so super fascinated with just this aspect of it that they didn't realize. And I really like that. I really like so that's not quite a course. I can't really like run a course of like, I'm going to inspire you today. And so the idea of a course kind of fell apart in my head, but I would love to write a book. I have a few books in my head, and I think I have a list of goals for the year on the wall here, and I think book is on there, a couple books, maybe even. So we'll see if I can crank them out.
Yeah, man, start one, and then the other 5 will follow easily. I think what you had just described, though, is like exactly what my thought process was at San Francisco State University. So I had like just gone to DEF CON, and then I returned back to college because I was like, damn, you know, I have some money now I can go back to college. So I was like, let me go back to college. And then I was in computer science, and all of the students, I was like, oh, cool. Like, we're learning all this stuff. Like, you guys know you can hack stuff with this, right? Like, you can do all these things. And everyone's like, no, I didn't know that. And I'm like, why did you take computer science? It's like, I don't know, maybe I'll get a job making a website or a game or something. And I'm like, but there's so many cool things you can do with this stuff. And they didn't know. And that's not their fault, because like no one had ever showed them that stuff. So I was like, how do I inspire them? So I brought in from people from industry. I actually knew some people that that worked at NCC and other types of companies, other pen testing firms. I brought them in, and I was like, here, just go on stage, just talk about what you do, talk about your passion, and just that's all you gotta do. And then like we formed like the hacking club out of that, and then we got people. I think like the second year, the president who I handed it off to, he like brought them to DEF CON and stuff like that, something I'd never done. And it's like, that was really inspiring. So if you're talking about like inspiring people, then I think like reaching out to if it's specifically cybersecurity, information security, then it's like reaching out to those audiences or people or areas where they don't know. One thing that I failed at was like, I didn't actually create a guide to hand down to the next president so they could hold it down to the next president. So like, I think after like the third, fourth year, it's kind of like fizzled out, but it would be cool if there was like maybe there's already people that are doing this, but if you're listening and you want to do it, or if you want to do it, Jack, like building a platform where if you want to learn cybersecurity in like high schools or colleges, how easy, like kind of like the B-sides model where you can just deploy it by like, city, the conference, but do it by like education and then get the local people involved.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm doing that already with the show. A lot of people come to me saying that I inspired them to get into that career, and it's really cool to see that.
What kind of, and at least with the book sides, like you've done a lot of stuff, like the entire party, like that can be a whole like one chapter in your book. So like if you were to write a book, what would the book be about? What are some of your book ideas?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a story that I never shared. Like it was given to me like 5 years ago or so, and it's just one of those stories that's like, this is the most incredible story ever, but I can't fact check it, so I was never able to publish it. And so maybe there's something there. Just take it with a grain of salt. Here's a crazy story that just doesn't quite fit the show. And then there's another one which is just related to a certain aspect of cybercrime that I think would be fun to dive deep into, book-wise, and have a lot of fun there, learning all about it, talking to the criminals, talking to the law enforcement, talking to the victims, talking to as many people as I can, the threat intelligence people, trying to track these people, and to put it all together. And I think there's a book there as well.
That's great. Have you ever, so like you speak to both people, you speak to everyone on like both sides of the fence and stuff. So like there was this one hacker camp that I went to, and the guy, he was like, yeah, I got arrested by the FBI. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. And he's like telling me all about it. And then I was in Atlanta, and then I was at another conference, and the guy was telling me he was an FBI special agent, and he was giving a talk, and at the end of it, I'm like, oh, awesome, like great talk or whatever. And then he's like, yeah, and we're talking a little bit, and he's like, yeah, I was actually in this one country, it wasn't the US, it was in this other country, and I was like I was like leading this investigation for getting all these people. I'm like, oh, you're the guy who arrested my friend, the person I knew previously.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you where you've like connected the dots of like different types of actors and people and stuff like this?
I suppose a few times where I'm just like, oh wow, you're the lawyer, your lawyer represented this other lawyer or something like that. But what's really funny is when pretty much every episode somebody will email me saying, I never thought that you'd do an episode about my brother or something, or I was the sysadmin at the school when this kid hacked, when your episode talked about the school that got hacked. I was there, and it's really interesting. Whenever somebody is really close to the story, every episode someone reaches out and saying, wow, I was the guy that you talked about in that episode. And that's always really fun.
Any good ones? Any people that reached out and you're like, oh, this is crazy, this could be another story?
I mean, there was an FBI agent that that reached out and said, yeah, you put my name in there, like FBI agent this, and I'm him. And it was really interesting hearing you talk about me. And another one was when I interviewed some cyber criminal, and he went to prison for a while. And when I told his story, the district attorney from California who prosecuted him was like, I could never get him to talk. I'm so glad that I finally heard the whole story, because he just did not want to crack at all, even after like showing him all the evidence we had. And I can't believe he explained it all to you. And I was like, yeah, that's great.
This was like post everything, right? Like he'd already been like crimed. Okay, then yeah, I guess
he served his time and was done. So she couldn't get him on anything more, but she was like, I didn't know that's where he hid the thing or whatever. And I was like, okay, now you know.
The question I want to know is like cultivating your fans and stuff like that. So how have you amassed like so many people on like Discord?
So Discord was created by the fans themselves, which is great. I love when it's like self-moderating, so I don't have to do the work. So they created it, and then I joined like a couple months later. Like, wow, I can't believe you created this place. And then that like social media has evolved over time. You could say that at the least, right? There's a lot of places people are moving from here and there and all this sort of thing. But Discord has kind of been this place where I'm just like, this is where the people I want to hang out with the most are. And so whenever, people get upset and start leaving Twitter and stuff, I'm just like, I'm fine right here in Discord because this is where it is. So I've always been telling people like, hey, if you want to hang out with me, I'm right here. And so it's just fun to create this place for us to hang out. And it's great because it's just because people who love me are in there, right? So it's just a fun place. It's like a free space for me to just be like, hey, I've got this, here's the art I made today or whatever, and I get all the love for it. So it's very flattering for me that there's that many people in there just for me.
That's terrific. I love the support. Has anyone ever has it ever been the, how do you say, like inverse, where anyone was like talking shit about you and then like the community's like, let's go raid them kind of thing? And you're like, no, chill, guy.
It's amazingly, like, you think a hacker Discord channel would just be like off the rails and gross and slimy and weird, especially about the darknet, right? But it's amazingly well regulated or moderated. And there's some weird stuff that happens, but I think that is part of what I do, right? So we'll have some former guests get on and start arguing with each other and stuff like that, and it's hilarious. There's some moments in there. There's some moments.
How do you guys like handle that kind of stuff when people are like acting wild? Like, has it ever been like kind of too crazy?
Yeah, people get banned. There's a whole bunch of rules, so people get banned, and I'm just like, no, you can't ban a guest. He was part of the show. You got to bring him back on. So I don't run it, so I have to like ask the moderators, bring him back on. They're like, but he's being a jerk. Yeah, I know. But we can't bend the rules just because he was on your show. I know, but please, this time I'll tell him not to mess up anymore.
So what guests do you want to see coming up in the future? Like I know we kind of touched on like those crazy types of interviews and stuff like that. But is there any ones that are like particularly in mind that you want to do? And like, have you traveled internationally for some of your interviews, or do you mostly take them on call?
Yeah, they're always on the phone. I haven't really traveled much for interviews, but I think
you got to do a world tour, man. You just got to start running around.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really fun to like interview Snowden and Julian Assange and stuff, and go to where they are and actually talk with them in person. But I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Why not? Did you ask them yet?
I've asked Snowden, but Julian, I'll let him chill out for a while. He's still decompressing, I'm sure.
I don't know, man. Maybe he's waiting for your call.
Yeah, I bet he's flooded with people.
Yeah, and then I think on one of that interview with Hack the Box, you expressed that like you don't want to talk to people that are like currently doing criminal stuff. You want to talk to them like after they've been caught and stuff like that, because the story's like more so there. Is that correct?
Yeah. If people are like actively getting away with crime, then that is kind of romanticizing the whole idea of it. And so I do like romanticizing it up until the part where they get arrested, and then I'm like, see, I knew you shouldn't have done that. you're in big trouble now, and of course you're going to go to prison. So when there is this arc where it's like there's a redemption, not so much redemption, but like you got in trouble for the stuff you did, that doesn't seem like it's really romanticizing it as much, because it's like, see, you do this crime and you're going to do the time. And those stories are more rare than people getting away with stuff. There's a lot more stories of people getting away with stuff, but I feel like it's my responsibility to be like not trying to promote this. And I think I got it. I got a warning from YouTube yesterday that was like, this is 2 step-by-step how to hack something. We are going to make you watch this mandatory video on what is allowed and not allowed on YouTube, or else you're going to get a strike on your channel. And so I have to watch this video to avoid my first strike. And so they, if I'm too like, here's how to ruin the world or whatever, then then I think that's not being very ethical. So I've got some moral responsibility there to be like, this is you get in trouble if you do this, and see, I told you.
Interesting. Was the strike from one of your episodes, or was it like other type of content that you had put up there?
Yeah, it was a clip from an episode. So I think we took a clip on, here are the steps on how to, I don't know, steal a password or hack a bank or something. And they didn't like it.
They didn't like that one. Okay. How close? Because I know that some people on YouTube, or some YouTubers are like very, very close with like the YouTube elitist. I don't know, like the group of like YouTubers where they're like, they decide who's going to be viral. They decide on the strikes and stuff like that. Are you close to YouTube and up there, or is it kind of still like there's some like leeway, or like you're kind of like in the middle between? Like...
There was I didn't really care for YouTube at all, and then when they were trying to get podcasts going on YouTube, they reached out and said, what can we do to get your podcast on YouTube? I said, well, I don't have any video, so I don't think it's going to fit. And by the way, I don't think podcasts work on YouTube because it's just audio, and I don't think you understand podcasts. And they're like, well, we want you to have video, and we want to entice you. So they worked with me for like a year to get me to come over. They connected me with some different teams to try to figure out how to get video for my show, even the back catalog and stuff. And so we ended up working with some graphics to get it going and put it up on YouTube, which, and then that, I had a close connection with them for a few years. They helped me get like a vanity URL or something like that. They helped me with a couple things that was really nice, and promoted me as well. And then I think those people quit, so I don't know who my contacts are anymore. But yeah, it was for a little while. They liked me for a while, and it gave me a little bit of the honey.
Were you able to get some like good revenue on that at the time, or still currently getting some revenue from?
Well, the funny thing is like audio only has been the way I've focused. I'm an audio storyteller. I really don't care about video. YouTube is kind of a throwaway. Okay, I'll throw it up on there just because you're really asking nice. And recently, the monthly downloads for YouTube has exceeded my monthly downloads for audio only. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm having an identity crisis now. This is not, should I switch to YouTube? Should I become a YouTuber, or am I a podcaster still, or what is going on here? So I don't know what to do when my flagship product is no longer my flagship product. It's now my second thing is now my flagship product. So I've been experimenting with ads on YouTube, and I just throw in whatever the just monetize button does. And that's a bit different than the way my podcast earns money. And so my podcast earns a lot more money, but YouTube is getting more downloads, and I have to sort of maybe reconcile what it is I want to do there.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe hire somebody that just does the visualizations and you just continue to do the audio.
Yeah, I think for next year I'll be growing my team to help me with more stuff that I just can't focus on, because that's just, like I said, it's a secondary thing that I just put zero effort into. I have an audio producer and editor that does stuff, and I just leave it to them. It's kind of all automated. It's hands off for me. They do all the work to get things published, and so maybe I need to put more effort into it in order to capitalize on that.
Get a video guy, yeah. There's a really good book, Who Not How, by Dan Sullivan. Teaches like, not to how to do it yourself, but just find the best person for that particular thing, and then you'll be able to relax it from your brain, kind of thing. And then the other one is have you considered either educating or teaching more people how to do and create podcast series that are outside of cybersecurity and in other niches where they want to grow and just be a part of those communities?
Yeah, for a while I was teaching podcaster things. I have a blog. The website is lime.link, and I had published a few YouTube videos about some of my podcasting tips and stuff as well. So I did actually teach marketing and other things for podcasting there.
Did you like it? Love it? How was that experience?
Yeah, I thought it was great because I used to go onto the Reddit board for podcasting, and just the same question, how do I market my show? And I'm just like, look, I got a video ready to go. I'm glad you asked. Done. Let's go on to the next one. Instead of, I used to spend hours just writing out responses to these people, and now I could just easily link it. And so it's nice to just put it all out from my head.
Yeah. Definitely. That's another book idea. Like you have so much content. I think it'd be pretty easy for you to create a book. It's just like storyboarding that, I guess, and building that out.
Yeah, there's probably enough content to write a podcasting book, but I think people get focused on the wrong thing. I think that when they're starting a podcast, they want the mechanics of it and not so much how to make good stuff. And then even when you give them here's the trick on how to make good stuff, it's just too hard for them and they don't get it. So it is. I don't know if it'll do very well if I had a podcasting book.
Question about your team. How many people are actually on your team? Or like roundabout number?
Probably 10. It's very hub and spoke like, right? So I will give my narration to somebody who just fixes my ums and flubs and they'll just give it back to me. And then I'll do some work on it and then I'll give it to a sound designer and say, you add songs to it, and then they'll give it back to me, and then I'll do more work on it, and then I'll give it to a transcriptionist. I'm like, you transcribe this, and then they give it back to me, right? So I'm the hub of it, and it would be nice to have someone else sort of be that hub, or at least have like a different pipeline of like it could, once I send it to this person, it gets sent down the line until it comes back to me all done. But yeah, we've got a mixer, a editor, an assembler, a sound designer, an artist, then there's a couple assistants, so I'd say about 10.
About 10, nice. Wow.
Not full-time, right? They're all just like a couple hours a month.
A couple hours a month. How did you find them? Did they reach out to you, or did you reach out to them?
Most of them, I think, reached out to me, and a couple of times maybe I just knew someone, and I said, hey, do you think you know anybody who can do this? I could do that. Okay, cool, great.
Exactly, and that's where our company, Top Cleared Recruiting, comes in. Finding the right cybersecurity talent with the necessary clearances can be a major hurdle. Did you know that it could take 8 to 15 months on average to hire somebody with a TS SCI plus full polyscope? At Top Cleared Recruiting, we have a network of 1.3 million cleared professionals, ranging from C&O developers, reverse engineers, and data scientists. Whether you're working on offensive operations or data analysis, we connect you with the elite talent you need fast. Visit topclearrecruiting.com and let us help you to find the perfect candidate, already cleared and ready to go. Nice. It's great when it happens like that. What are some of your favorite types of interviews, types of people to interview? And who do you love to interview that you haven't yet?
My favorite types of people to interview are the ones with the highest stakes, right? So you got this social engineering story about a guy who was paid by a company to break into the building. Well, if he gets caught, he just pulls out a note from his pocket and is like, no, your boss told me to try to break in. It's cool. And then they're like, oh, okay, good on you. But that to me, that's low stakes. However, my listeners love those episodes because they love all the ways that someone tricks to get into the building. My high stakes version of that is like when the CIA is doing it and they're like, yeah, if we get caught, our lives are at stake. We might go to prison for life, whatever that is. And so we have to like be extremely careful not to get caught sneaking into this building or exfiltrating this data or stealing these documents or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, that's the real exciting stuff. And for some reason those episodes don't do as well, but I love them so much more because I'm like, this is playing for real. This is no longer like Monopoly money.
That's so funny. I think it's because like maybe it's because all the people are like, oh, I can imagine myself like breaking in. It's like, oh, I got a note, it's fine. Versus like, yeah, of course the CIA they have cyanide capsules just in case. Like, yeah, we know that part. Like, yeah, I don't know.
No, I only interviewed one CIA agent, and I keep courting a bunch of FBI agents to come on my show, but they're all hesitant. So I really don't have that many episodes where it is that high stakes. I need more of it. That's where I love hanging out.
Okay, so you want some 3-letter agency workers or retired ones to come on and say like, yeah, so I can kind of talk about some stuff now.
Yeah, I think so. That'd be really fun.
Okay, cool. Let's see if I can try to ring some up and send them your way. I've asked like so many of my questions to just make sure like, you know, I learn more about you, your business and everything. So I'd like to ask maybe about like podcasters and other people that are like starting off in general. So like what tools would you recommend for people starting off? Right now I'm using like Riverside, obviously on it right now. And then we're using Transistor, so easy delivery. And then we're just everything else, using like CapCut for editing videos and stuff like that. But is there any like tools or things that you recommend people to like start with and like not go too far into the weeds with?
My first episode I made with Audacity because it was a free audio editing tool. But the thing with Audacity is that it's destructive editing. So if I cut off part of the audio, I can't ever get it back unless I re-import that whole audio clip. And that was like so nerve-wracking to me of like, do I want to delete this forever? Oh my gosh, no, I don't know. And so I recommend not using it for that because most of the other tools I use Hindenburg to do my editing with. Once you cut something, you can bring it back. You can just regrow it and stretch it back out or whatever, and it's okay. You didn't delete it forever. And so that's the non-destructive editor. So that's really the only tip I have is use a non-destructive editor to save your sanity. Any of the other hosting provider is probably going to be fine, and any editor tool that you have, as long as it's non-destructive, is fine. And honestly, I think it's a lot less about like I said, the mechanics of it, of like which microphone to use and audio interface and all this sort of thing, and more about the content and finding something just really fascinating that people are going to want to listen to, and being a unique voice in the crowd as well is probably way more important than the tools you're using.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is there any? Let's see. So you upgraded to your better mic later. What are some immediate tools? Like I just got this light recently. I guess you don't need to do video, but like, what are other things that people could like look out for that they maybe might need in the future?
For podcasting, I think if you're going to be investing in it, it's probably a good idea to invest in a course or a book on how to be a better podcaster, or like even if you're like a comedian, like there's courses on how to write jokes, right? So if you're making a funny podcast, be funnier and write your bits out better or something, right? And so like it's not so much sound better because so as long as you don't sound terrible, like is you're not talking into a toilet or a potato or whatever, then I think people are going to be very forgiving on stuff. If it's really hard to hear and it's distracting because of it, then that's a problem that you need to sort out. But once you just get past that and you're in like you have a $35 microphone there, and that sounds fine. I have a $400 microphone here, and the difference is like 5%, right? It's a 5% difference or 2% difference. It's really not that different. I guess being able to address the mic is another thing. Like when you're really, up close compared to like farther away, or how you're like how the room sounds around it and stuff like that, I think is probably a skill worth practicing as well. Of find that perfect space of where, and then how high the recording level is on the mic as well, so that you're not blowing things out or having those like plosives and pops and stuff. Is probably,
you can't even do it on your mic. Your mic's so good it just didn't pick up those.
Yeah. So just the different techniques and stuff on how to address the mic, I think is probably a skill as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll have some guests on and like I'll look at the needle and it's like, can you talk a little bit louder, please? Because you're not even getting picked up, kind of thing. And I get the change and editing and stuff like that. And
yeah. So for you, I see you talking. I guess your mouth is just above your mic, and so when your air comes out of your mouth, it's going past your mic. But for me, the mic is on my side, and so when I'm talking straight ahead, the plosives and the P's and the pops and stuff the air doesn't hit the mic to cause that sort of sound, and so I like it just off to the side because of that.
Like this,
but it's still pointed at your mouth.
Like,
so I like so there's another thing about just like what it is you like. I really like the podcast Criminal and 99% Invisible, Roman Mars. They have this really up close and rich and warm voice that they're using, and and I love that like real intimate sound. And so again, it's just like, what is the sound? What sound do I like the most out of all the shows that I'm listening to? How do I replicate that sound? And I fight with my audio producer on this, where he's just like, no, 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 you need to be like 2 feet away from your mic, and like this distance and stuff, and nice this and that. And I'm like, no, I want the rich, warm tones and the intimacy. I want to be really up close. And he's like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. So we argue about it.
I mean, if those were the two examples, I think it does sound significantly better when it's like up and close. Specifically, your podcast. Like, I don't know if all podcasts can do it, but I think
Yeah, we meet in the middle. We meet in the middle. I don't go to the distance that he wants. He wants
half
me
the episode you're out here, the other half episode you'll be closer.
I think he wants me at 2 hang loose distances, and I want to be at like 1 inch distance, which is here.
Oh,
and
yeah, okay, I see
so
the
he's
middle
like,
now.
why don't we meet at one hang loose distance, 1 fist away from the mic, and yeah, he's got me there. So I've set my my audio interface to be ideal at that space, which is where I am now. Yeah. Yeah, it's because it's too obnoxious to be like way super loud like all the time and right up in your ears and stuff like that. So that's what he's like, it's just like, whoa, back up, bro. You're in my private space. Like, fine.
I'm probably the worst. I'm probably too big of a fan because I've already listened to like you for like at least hours at this point. So like it doesn't matter how far you are. Like if it's closer, it still sounds good to me. I'm probably the worst person to take the advice from because you probably want somebody who's like fresh and it's like, hey, listen to this guy. How is he? And he's like, hey, he's a little close. Like I don't know this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's kind of funny to think about. Is like, well, like if I'm like super right up close, like an inch away, and a lot of people when they're listening to the podcast, they've got like earbuds in their head, right? It's not even like outside their head; it's inside their ear. And so, really, if you were like to imagine, my mouth is just like 1 inch away from your ear, and that's just fascinating to have someone's head, like mouth, that close to you when you're talking. There's a really deep well you could go into on sound design as well. There was I can't remember his name, Brian Koenig or something like this. Brandon, he made the podcast Wolverine, and the sound design in there is really fantastic because what he'll sometimes use is 2 microphones that are at the distance of where your ears are, and they record like it's kind of an acting show where there's like actors on a stage and stuff, right? So he'll actually have them walk, from inside a house to outside, and you can hear the difference between what a room sounds like compared to what outside sounds like, and you can actually hear it in the show of like, wow, we've actually gone outside. But not only that, it's this binaural two microphone recording, so you can hear one actor in this ear and the other actor in this ear, and the way he's holding the mics is very close to where your ears would be. And so he's just like such a stickler on like having the most authentic sounding recording you could possibly get to make it feel like you're actually there. And it's just incredible somehow, some of the depths that some people go with their immersiveness on the way the audio sounds. And I love that. I really love that.
That's really interesting. I think it was like at Disneyland or something where we sat
haircut.
at this one show. It's the haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've heard of this. Yeah, I was like 10 when I did this or something. Like, are they still doing that, or is it?
Yeah,
kind of like
I think so. And that was the same concept, which is just the mics are right in your ear and the headphones. Yeah, it feels like somebody is actually cutting your hair, and you're looking back like, dude, that guy just behind me just snipped my head.
Yeah, it's like, back up, bro.
Yeah, that's great, and to bring that through into a podcast where it feels like you're in that space and something just happened behind you and you're like, it's great. I think when there's a Santana song that's recorded where they use like 6 mics or something, like they used it in a way as if you had 6 ears. And if you had 6 ears, how would this sound? And it is so deep and rich in the recording. And polyphonic, I think, is the Santana. If you look up YouTube polyphonic Santana, you'll probably find this, and it's just like, whoa, listen with headphones on. You'll be like, man, there is stuff happening all around my head. So this brings us into like the world of a couple years ago. I had ear surgery. My left ear, the bone. There was three bones in your ear: the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. And one of them had grown too large, and my bones wouldn't vibrate in the way that you should, and so I couldn't hear very well in my left ear. And so I got ear surgery, fixed that bone. I got a titanium bone in my ear. And so this gave me, suddenly I was able to listen to stereo sounds for the first time as an adult. And yeah, it gave me a whole new thing to explore, which is this whole world of audio and how things are balanced and stereo and all this kind of stuff, which I was just listening in mono all this time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So what was something that you like re-listened to and then you're like, have you guys always been hearing it like this? Like, damn.
Yeah, the Beatles is really good at having a very rich stereo sound, but I think Billie Eilish was what really tripped me up, because she has like 30 voices in each one of her songs. Their songs seem very simple in mono, where it's just her singing and maybe a beat and a very simple bass line or something. There's not much to it in mono, but in stereo, I'm hearing so many voices, and I can hear them far away, I can hear them close up, I can hear them in front of me, I can hear them behind me, and suddenly that just had like a million layers of texture that I had never heard before, and I was like, holy cow, this is incredible production. I can't believe the production of this.
That's terrific. Have you also been to like shows and also heard such good quality after surgery?
Not so much at shows. I've been to a few concerts, but the difference really hasn't come through. That's a good question. So I had been to Tool like 6 times, and then I went to Tool again after surgery, and I didn't notice a big difference. So I'm surprised I didn't see that. Radiohead was another one that I thought was really good at doing a rich.
Did you see them live?
I haven't. I wish I did.
Are they still perform? They're not performing
No,
anymore.
they have the Smile now, which is something they're going around performing. So it's just Tom York and Johnny Greenwood in the Smile. Maybe they've got a drummer too. I don't know, but it's that they've been touring, but not Radiohead. Radiohead's my favorite. In Spotify Wrapped last year and again this year, I was in the top like 0.1% of listeners for Radiohead.
Okay. What other artists?
Oh my gosh.
Pull up your Spotify.
I mean, I go into crazy genres. So right now I'm currently listening to a ton of Russian art music, which is like classical Russian piano with like some almost an opera like singing over it, which is like a poem that they're singing or something like that. And I've just been listening to that on repeat for about 2 weeks now. And before that was jazz. I was just listening to jazz like on repeat. Not just on repeat, but like a wide variety of jazz music. And then, I got deep into dubstep there for a while and just all over the board.
I don't know. Do you listen to a lot of more like podcasting type content rather than music, or do you find yourself spending a lot of time doing both?
In this last year, I listened to a lot of audiobooks. I've previously, I listened to a whole lot of podcasts, and I still listen to a lot of podcasts, but it's kind of, audiobooks have kind of become my more primary thing that I listen to whenever I'm working out or going on runs or long drives.
Any good books that you recommend?
Yeah, there's I like Yuval Noah Harari's books, Homo Sapiens. I just finished the Almanac of Naval, and I thought that was really fascinating.
Okay, what was that about?
Naval is he likes to be more of a philosopher these days, I think. So he's just talking about here's how to make money. Here's like the three most important things in life should probably be health, wealth, and happiness, right? And it's nice to just have someone just lay it out for you. Like these are your top priorities in life: health, wealth, and happiness. You want to have the wealth to the point where you're not struggling with money. You're not worried about money. You want to just be comfortable in that sense. You don't have to think about it anymore. You're happy there. And so then it's like, well, how do we get wealth as well? So he goes into like the details of like what it is you can do. And it's really fascinating just to kind of hear someone explain things in the way he does. He has it really, I like it when people just sort of surprise me with the way they explain things. I think this last year I got into existentialism as well, philosophy. And so I listened to Sartre and Camus and Simone de Beauvoir and even Nietzsche quite a bit, and try to fully understand this philosophy. And this is the thing I do, is I want to like grasp it and understand it and take notes, and then try to explain what I think of it before I move on to the next thing, because I think there's a lot, maybe even better philosophies out there for me. But until I fully understand this one and I can articulate what it is I love about it, then I'm going to stay with it, because I don't want to just like have it half baked in my head and move on. I think when I was learning about cybersecurity, writing about cybersecurity is what helped me get my like language skills to be able to talk eloquently about it. And I think the same thing is going on with philosophy right now, is writing about philosophy is helping me get better at philosophy so that I can actually understand myself better and be able to speak eloquently about it. And I'm working on that, and I can't wait to get to that point with philosophy.
I mean, you're doing it right now. So. And I don't think it's like a specific like destination. It's probably more like the journey thing. So it's like, I mean, that's how I take most things in, where it's like not going to be like, oh, now I'm speaking good. And it's like, now I'm better than yesterday. And that's kind of like the point kind of thing. Because if you always like look for the destination, then you might get lost not knowing and seeing the distance and the journey that you've come across. You've done. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun getting into that stuff.
Well, thank you so much, Jack. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. I really, thank you so much for all these book suggestions, sharing us more about, the insights of Darknet Diaries, and as well as with your life, is there anything that you'd like to promote or share? Anything else that is going on in your life personally or with the podcast as well?
No, I'm not here to promote anything. I'm just happy to be hanging out with you for a couple hours. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, it was terrific fun. Thank you so much for being here. I would love it if you could like do an intro to my podcast too, just like an audio one, and I could like insert it in.
Yeah.
Would you be able to do that?
For sure.
Okay. I'll let you I'll give you creativity to say whatever you want. Or just like opening it up.
You're listening to Hackers to Founders with Chris Magistrato.
Perfect. 10 out of 10. We're going to use that in the openings and maybe for the rest of them. We'll see. All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope you really enjoyed your Christmas. I hope you enjoy your New Year's. I'll let you know more about how the video is going to be set up, and I'll let you know along the way. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show. It's been really appreciate you having here. I know that great things will happen. Keep reading up. Get some really happy philosophers in there too. Nietzsche's kind of sad, but I want you to get some good stuff in there too. So I'll send you some stuff for a good philosophical diet.
I love it. Cool. Right, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Have a good one. Of course.